Now, there's a rectangle. A sheet of paper is a rectangle, and as you can see, this particular sheet of paper is 3 boxes high and 4 boxes across. And you'd say its length is 4 and its breadth is 3. Okay? And so adding that all together, you can see that there are 12 boxes making up the whole thing. And we're going to call each of those boxes a square unit. Okay? And how can you get that 12 rather than having to do it the really old way, which is to count each one? It is much easier just to get the length of 4 and multiply by 3. 4 times 3 gives you 12 without having to count them. So that's the first part. So the area of a rectangle is always just the length times the breadth. You probably already knew that. Now, let's go to the slightly more complicated thing, and that is, if I change the names, instead of being length, I call that the base, and instead of being the breadth, I call that the height. What I want to talk about this time is triangles. Now you can see I've drawn a diagonal down there, and as you can see from my picture, if you were to cut it down there, you'd have 2 areas that would have to be exactly half of the rectangle that I had before, which had 12 square units. That had 12 square units, so this triangle here would have to have 6 square units. So you think about it, you can no longer just get your base, which is 4, and times it by the height, which is 3, because that would give you 12. So of course the obvious thing to do is, how do you get 6 out of that? Well, instead of going 4 times 3, you simply go 4 times 3 and then you halve it. So the formula for a triangle is a half times the base times the height, and that explains it. Well, let's get on to actually answering some practical or some actual questions on this. Now, the first shape, of course, that we've got here is a square, which is a type of rectangle. So in this case, it has got a 7 centimetre side there. And the area, you think about the rectangle that I said that was length times breadth. Well, in this case, the length and the breadth are the same. And so we just say it's side times side, but a better way to say side times side is just simply, instead of s times s, it's s squared. Well, our s value is 7. S equals 7 is the information we've got. So 7 squared is 49. Now here's the thing, you don't just call it centimetres, but since it's area, it's centimetres squared. Okay? And so a centimetre squared might look about that big, and if we kept drawing them, you'd get 7 of them along the bottom, and you'd get 7 rows of them, and you'd end up getting 49 centimetres squared. That's what area is all about. It's measuring the space inside. Let's look at the second one. Now it says answer in metres, and you'll notice we've got 4 metres there, but this one's in centimetres. So you can't afford to keep it in centimetres. You have to change that. You say 250 centimetres, and you think about it, there's 100 centimetres in a metre, so that must actually be, well, I'll write it here, 2.5 metres. So our length is 4 metres, and our breadth is 2.5 metres, so we simply substitute them into the formula, area equals length times breadth, and we've got 4 times 2.5, remember that there's an invisible times in there because it's algebra, 4 times 2.5, and you get your calculator out, that turns out to be 10. Now it said answer in metres, it should say metres squared. Answer in metres squared, there's your answer. And coming to our last example, you'll remember the triangle that I did on paper. Well, all triangles have the same formula, and it is area equals a half times the base times the height. Now, since it says answer in centimetres squared, well, down here, that one's okay. That says 20 centimetres. That's the height, h equals. But the base of this triangle says 0.4 metres. Now, 0.4 metres, since there's 100 centimetres in a metre, 0.4 metres, move the decimal place 2 places forward and you get 40 centimetres. So that's the base. And so we've got a height, we've got a base, and so we go to the formula. A half times the base times the height. Now let's do that. So to work on multiplications, if there's more than one multiplier, you just work from left to right. So it's a half times 40, well that's 20. And so we've done those two, they become 20. 20 times 20, you can go to your calculator if you need, but it's 400 centimetres squared. So there's all of the three basic shapes. Now let's go to the final part of this lesson, which is what if you get a composite shape? This one's made up of a rectangle and a triangle. Now let's have a look at the rectangle. That's the easier shape. Let's call that area 1. Okay. Now area 1, you can see that it has a base, or we'll call it a length. Length times breadth. So 8 times 6. And that equals 48. And that'll be in metres squared. And then we've got area 2. Now area 2 is a triangle, so we're going to have to put a half in front of our calculation. So it's a half times. Now what's the base of the triangle? Well, it doesn't say it directly, but you can see down here it's 8 metres. So there's an 8 there. So it's a half times base. And then you look at the height. Well, it's not 10 and it's not 6, but in fact that distance there must be 10 minus 6, which equals 4. So the height of that triangle is 4. So it's a half times 8, that's 4, times 4. 4 times 4 is 16 metres squared. So we've got two answers, 48 and 16. Therefore, the total area equals 48 plus 16. Which we find they were our two answers. And 48 plus 16 is 64 square metres.